Okay, in this video we're going to work through a sample quiz. This is in fact an old quiz from a couple of years ago, and the students that year had chosen Donald Trump as the speaker for their fallacy paper, and I will typically set up quizzes around that. So this year we have one group of students that are doing Elon Musk. I'll try to find a bunch of Elon Musk fallacies, and I'll find some Donald Trump fallacies that are more current, and we'll work with that for, and let me say I'm confident that we'll find lots of fallacies from both of those two individuals. So we're just going to call this sample here, and we don't need to know where you're sitting, and away we go. So first of all, I'm going to assess a little bit whether you can spot these fallacies, and I'll try not to do a Donald Trump impersonation here, but Donald Trump says, she's so brave, so courageous. Personally, I prefer teenage education activists who didn't get shot in the head. Now, I think, we want to find out what's the conclusion. And Donald Trump's always a little bit hard to read, but I think the conclusion is that he doesn't like this particular teenage education activist, and that so maybe she's not brave and courageous. And so to me, this looks like a circumstantial ad hominem. There's probably a case to be made, given that it's made sarcastically, that that could be maybe a fallacy of accent based on how you see it being said. I would probably give some points for that, but I see this as a circumstantial. Next one, if someone hits me, I'm going to hit them so hard, we're going to hit them 10 times harder. Let's face it, when people come after me, they go down the tubes. Pretty obvious ad baculum or a threat of force. I'm doing pretty well. I'm number one in every poll by a lot. That's an ad populum or popularity. So the idea that he's doing well as a politician because he's number one in the polls is what I'm keying in on there. Donald Trump is just to say, you look at Baltimore, you look at Cleveland, you look at all of those places just exploding. We have an African-American president and we've never had it so bad. To me, this looks like Texas sharpshooter. I'm looking at, he mentions two places and then talks about, a much more general conclusion. I would also probably respect an answer like hasty generalization. So that's some Donald Trump fallacies. And now I'm going to evaluate you on some of the basic concept material. So counterexamples can be used when an argument is. So think about when we were able to use counterexamples. We could use them for both syllogisms and also informal fallacies, so long as the argument was invalid but not when they were valid. Thinking about how we couldn't have a counterexample for something like the false dichotomy. And so this is when they are invalid. When an argument has a true conclusion and true premises, can you conclude the argument is valid? No. You would need more information than that. Principal charity requires us to consider the blank version of an argument we wish to assess. We're looking for the best. the contradiction of an A-form statement. So here we might want to think about our square of opposition. And the contradiction of an A is an O. The fallacy of begging the question and the fallacy of false dichotomy are both valid arguments. Turning the page. Putting these into standard form. Giving the distribution and giving the two-circle diagram. Got to think about that a little bit, because giving diagrams on Learn quiz is going to be a little rough. I might want to say give the contradiction instead. So be open to that. So Donald Trump said, the beauty of me is that I'm very rich. So translate that into standard form. I would do it as all things that are my beauty are things that are my being rich. Okay, and now you say, no, that's an A-form statement. So that's done. Indicate the distribution of the subject and predicate. Okay, so that's the flat line for distributed, curved line for undistributed. Give the appropriate two-circle diagram. Well, here I would probably do that. Sometimes your best investments are the ones you don't make. So we got an indication of quantity here. So some best investments are not, because we always want to try to capture those negatives in the form of the statement, are not investments made. And so that's an O-form statement. Distribution for an O is undistributed in the subject, distributed in the predicate. And so it looks like that. Most good people don't go into government. So we got a negative there, and we've got a quantity. So this is some good people are not in government. Distributions, again, this is an O. So we have undistributed, distributed. If you want to bracket these subjects and predicates off, so it's really obvious where they are, that's great. And quite frankly, it's the same diagram. Tiny children are not horses. I think this is remarked upon as his statement at the time, but I forget the context now. It's been a long couple of years. So this would be all tiny children. Oh, so we got that not. We got to go no tiny children are horses. So that's an E-form statement. Everything is distributed. And the drawing looks like that. What's the difference between an argument where the premises and conclusion are true? That's one thing. And the second, argument that's valid. Okay, so we might want to start with the second, definition of valid. if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. Okay? And now, is that definition also going to be true of an argument where the premises and conclusion are true? Not necessarily. So an argument that has premises and conclusion both true isn't necessarily valid. And then the reverse is also true. An arg that is valid doesn't necessarily have true premises or conclusion. Give a counterexample for the fallacy. Okay, so we got to remember which our fallacy is here. So the fallacy is when you conclude something is false because the argument is includes a fallacy. So what we want to do is rely on an informal fallacy to say something that is obviously true. So example of fallacy, I believe that, now something obviously true, the sky is often blue because now what's the reason here? Let's suppose I have no evidence to the contrary. Okay, now we say, aha, this is fallacy of ignorance. Now, if I were to conclude that the sky is not blue because this argument or this example includes a fallacy, then I commit the fallacy. Give a counterexample for the fallacy of exclusive premises. So let's remember what that is. That's two negative premises, right? In a syllogism. Notice that this is an informal fallacy and this is a syllogistic logic question. So we're going to want to have something like no. Well, let's just make them all no's. So R blank, no blank, R blank, no blank, R blank. And we want the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false. So no cats are dogs, no dogs are felines, therefore no cats are felines. Obviously true, obviously false. All right, we're steaming right along here. Now we got to bring it all together and do a syllogism. So notice the steps. Standard syllogistic form, assess the argument using any of the methods. Now, over the years, I've varied this a little bit. In fact, usually we have some students take votes or championship in class as to what a form this question will take. Sometimes I've required all methods. Sometimes I've required only a single method. Sometimes I say any two. I think this year we want to keep it simple. So let's go with the any method. I'll give you multiple methods. Any one method would be good enough. So here's Donald Trump saying an illegal immigrant from Mexico assaulted someone, and if an illegal immigrant from Mexico is a violent criminal, then all illegal immigrants from Mexico are violent criminals. So I think the if-then probably tells us that this last part is the conclusion. The and joins two premises. So getting this in the form, let's start with the conclusion. All illegal Mexican immigrants are violent criminals. Now we got an illegal immigrant. So that's a number, meaning typically one in English. But in logic we mean some, right? At least one. So some illegal Mexican immigrants are assaulters. And I think to finish the connection, this is a little bit garbled, as Trump often is, but basically it would be all assaulters are violent criminals. And part of what got me to that is realizing that I needed to complete the circle on these terms, right? We needed the violent criminals, we needed to link the middle term. So I think that makes sense. And so now the rules, I would proceed first probably by just marking up the argument a little bit. So an I form, everything is undistributed. An A form, the subjects are distributed and the predicates are not. And so now we ask ourselves, right number of terms. So first rule is satisfied. Second rule, middle term must be distributed at least once. Check. Rule 3, terms distributed in the conclusion must be distributed in the premise in which they occur. It is not. This is the fallacy of illicit minor. No point in going any further, although it probably passes the rest of the rules because there's nothing negative here. A 3-circle diagram. Violent criminals and people who perpetrate assaults. And now, when we do these, it never hurts to do the universal premise first. So all assaulters are violent criminals. Some illegal Mexican immigrants are assaulters. So that could be there's at least one illegal Mexican immigrant that is an assaulter. Don't know if it's a violent criminal or not, but basically has to go in here. At least one illegal Mexican immigrant that's also an assaulter. Here it would not be an assaulter. Here it would not be an assaulter. Can't go there because that's already empty. And so that's the right place. And does this show us all illegal Mexican immigrants are violent criminals? We would need this region here shaded. I'll do it very faintly, right? That's what's not shaded. So that's not a match. If we want to try to cook up a counterexample, because that's a perfectly acceptable way to do this, we're going to have some, all. Okay, let's keep it really simple. So let's go all cats are dogs is our obviously false conclusion. Now we put cats here, and we put dogs here. And we want a middle term that's going to try to make these two true. That's not going to be super easy. What's true of all dogs? But only true of some cats. You could have, if we use mammals, not all mammals are dogs. I could have males. Some cats are males, true, but not all males are dogs. Well, you might have someone making the case there, but I don't think that's factually true. Trying to think about something about pets. No, some cats are pets. All no. I'm not sure this is true, but if there's at least one cat that's a search animal, but we think of all search animals being classified as dogs, we'd probably have it. I'd probably need to fine tune that a bit more, but I'll do that on my own time. I think that what that illustrates is the counterexamples are a method that, if it comes to you, is super elegant, but requires just a little bit extra finesse that doesn't always, and some doesn't always work, and some arguments way more usefully suggest their counterexamples than others. Okay, next one. So the word "so" here is probably a conclusion indicator. You can trust a politician who cannot be bought, so you can trust Donald Trump because he's so rich he cannot be bought. And I think that cannot is a negative. We got to capture that somehow. And the conclusion is you can trust Donald Trump. So probably we want to, maybe let's get that out here first. All Donald Trumps are trustworthy. So then you can trust a politician who cannot be bought. So how about no politicians that can be bought? Notice I've got the not in here. So no politicians that can be bought are trustworthy. And then the second premise comes after the because. I'd say here comes a reason. So we've got premise, conclusion, premise. Quite a common way of speaking, but not super obvious for logic. So he's refers to Donald Trump. So no Donald Trump, because we got to get this not, are politicians that can be bought. And if that's your version of that, then you've got exclusive premises here, which is, right, rule 4, if you want to keep track of that at home. So the circles, circle of all things that are Donald Trump, circle of all things that are trustworthy, and the circle of all politicians that are buyable. And then we have no politicians that can be bought are trustworthy. And then no Donald Trumps are politicians that can be bought. And what we're looking for, of course, is for these two regions to be shaded. And they are not. So that's invalid. An example, a counterexample for exclusive premises shouldn't be that hard to cook up. We would have no. So no dogs are cats. No cats are fish. We want false here. Let's go with no cats are wolves. Therefore, oh no, we could have gone with fish. Sorry. Therefore, all dogs are fish. That is this the same form? We got trustworthy. Yep, that works. Okay. And then this last one. Republicans are all jerks. Donald Trump is a jerk, therefore Donald Trump is Republican. This article, which was before the previous U.S. election, was this writer is trying to explain why people thought Donald Trump was a Republican. I don't think this isn't a quote from Donald Trump himself. Okay, so the therefore tells us where the conclusion is. So the number is all and of course, you know, just because I quote it doesn't mean I think it's true. All Republicans are jerks. All Donald Trump are jerks. Therefore, all Donald Trump is a Republican. And I think here we have a fairly obvious undistributed middle. And so we have all Republicans are jerks. This region here is empty. All Donald Trump are jerks. This region here is empty. You can see here that you could have a Donald Trump that's not a Republican. We'll try to do an example here, or a counterexample. All blank are blank. All blank are blank. Therefore, all blank are blank. And we want these two to be linked, these two to be linked, and those two to be linked with the same term. So let's do remember, we want this to be true and this to be false. So all cats are dogs is obviously false. Put dogs up here. What do we put here to make these both true and this one false? Well, how about mammals? All dogs are mammals, true. All cats are mammals, true. All cats are dogs, obviously false. And that's the quiz you would have written in, I think, the fall of 2016. Here we are in the fall of 20, and I've got to figure out how to create a quiz online that will measure your understanding as equally accurately as possible. I think it's fair to say that less emphasis on this terminology stuff, since that's really an open book slam dunk. I still do some of those. Probably more of these, and what I'll have to do, of course, is create a whole bunch of these fallacy examples, and then UMLearn will assign you random examples of those. And then, so suppose I create, instead of 4 of these fallacies, I find 40 Donald Trump fallacies. That should take not an unreasonable amount of time. And then, each student would have a slightly different mix of those. And it would be pretty easy also to create a bunch of different questions for these, right? So there's 6 fallacies to choose from. There's something like 20 informal fallacies to choose from. Pretty easy to create a slightly different test for each student based on that. And then I will have to create a fairly large number of these in order to test you on those. So that's kind of how I plan to spend my week. I hope you'll spend your week getting ready. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.